G'day everyone, welcome to this edition of DURKO's Notebook for the 2023 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Got a shitload I want to talk about, everything except the race of course, because it was just a bloody waste of time. A complete non-event in my opinion. Anyway, pull up a pew, sit back, relax and enjoy the show.
You wouldn't fucking read about it.
So the Baku City Circuit at 6 kilometres long is a circuit that's renowned for its right-hand turns and tight section through the historic castle section. Of course, there is the long straight, which is probably one of the longest straights in the whole calendar. And for me, I just can't stand the circuit. For me, it's boring. I see no challenge to it, especially with some parts of it being a distinct lack of real estate for the drivers to get their car through. And as we saw through last weekend's events, hardly any overtaking in any of the sprint race or the actual main race itself. So for me, I'm sorry to see that Azerbaijan has signed an extension to their contract to keep hosting a race there, but that's life. I will of course keep watching the race because I'll never miss a race just for the sake of it, but it's not one I particularly enjoy the most. So Friday was interesting because in free practice one, Gasly's car absolutely destroyed itself with internal fire, and they've elected some sort of a pipe with the smoke that was coming out of the air intake. Couldn't really pick the colour of the domination of pape he was to be, but they just sprayed the car in a shitload of foam and eventually got the fire out. So Alpine, they're not having a lot of luck this season so far, especially with Gasly's new signing. But I will talk later about AlphaTauri. Now in quali, Sarge had a massive accident, again talking about the lack of real estate because he came into a fast left-hand turn. Sainz has taken inside off circuit to allow him to go at his own pace. Somehow that's thrown Sargent, so he's then binned the Williams into the wall, destroyed the right rear end. We went on to the sprint race. Now Snood had a weird thing with his tyre because he clobbered the wall. He's come in, they've changed the tyre, and the team said, yeah, you're right to go, but the car wasn't mechanically fit to continue on, so he limped out with about 3.5 tyres. It worked, and the team copped a fine for that, which was just a stupid decision why the head mechanic bloke who's on that right rear can't say, the suspension arm is bent like a back leg of a dog. It should be straight. Something's not right here. Bizarre decisions. Anyway, the end of the sprint race, obviously George and Max had a bit of a verbal dust-up with each other in the pit lane over Max not being too keen on George racing him going to the turns and supposedly targeting him. I don't know how he's come up with that theory that he believes the Mercedes team are targeting Red Bull. More conspiracy theory from Max. I'm not saying anything to discredit Max. I just think that, as they say, rubbing is racing. It was a racing incident. There was no penalty handed out for it. Why you can't just accept it? Yeah, sure, your car copped a bit of damage. You're losing 3/4 of a second per lap, probably, they reckon, in drag. Because the coefficient of the air being sucked into the side pod, not travelling over the car. But anyway, it is what it is for the sprint race. So anyway, we move on from that. Now we go to the main race itself. That was, as I said before, a complete non-event. Obviously, De Vries went out. He clobbered the wall, bent his steering arm. This is when the Red Bull team, Christian Horner's effectively taken the blame for it because Max has called for a complete overhaul and review of their pit strategies when a car goes off, and it's potentially going to be a safety car because Max came in, he got his pit done, then they came out and they called the safety car, so they completely threw the strategy out and that put Chico in front of him, so Max wasn't too happy about that. And there was a weird incident that happened. So Lance Stroll's obviously going to double stack behind Nando. So he's coming to the pit lane not that hot. And George Russell thought, well, shit, I've got to take advantage here. I've got to come into the pit lane myself. So they've doubled up, coming to the pit lane. Now, it's pointed out that this sort of thing may have happened before, but there's no penalty against it. And I can't understand why there is no penalty or sanction or ruling that you can't side by side each other, go down the pit lane, because some pit lanes, as we know, are quite narrow and there's bugger all real estate for them to go, whereas Azerbaijan and some others do have the advantage of having quite a broad pit lane, like Coda. Albert Park can be tight in places, but how the hell can they just justified not giving any sort of warning or being called before the stewards to say, right, George, you can't undercut Lance until you get to your grid box and then pull in. You just got to ride the wave. And if he's going slow, that's just too bad. Suck it up, move on. You just got to deal with it as it is. So that was a strange incident that I haven't seen for a long, long time. So lap 30, this comes back to a comment Tony Dunn made when he was out here in Australia for the Aussie Grand Prix about the engine restrictions going on with the Red Bull Hondas. That when they lift off, the engine cuts the fuel supply and the pistons are effectively just under compression lock to assist in slowing the car down so they're not burning fuel, so on and so on. Because lap 30, Max made the comment about the engine braking not feeling right or not working right as far as he thought. So that triggered the memory in my thought of what Tony had said. And to me, that sort of reinforces Tony's idea or argument for this engine mapping that Honda are screwing with to effectively shut the 6 cylinders down, both banks of the V6, when they come off throttle to assist in engine braking. So we give credit to Tony again. That's coming up because Max openly made that comment over the air. So that was it for the race. Obviously, Chico won. Max was second, and then Leclerc. So, Ferrari, you've got to give credit to Ferrari. They're coming back. They're really starting to get some ground. I think maybe Freddie's steering that team in the right direction. Laurent, one of their key guys, is going to be take over from Franz Tost as the boss at AlphaTauri. We'll see how that goes for them. So, overall, probably one of the most boring races I've ever watched, and I'm not looking forward to Miami next week because I don't find it any more interesting than Baku. So there was a funny thing. I don't know if anyone picked up on this. Obviously, when the 3 drivers from the cool-down room, they're all sitting in the wrong chair, but that doesn't matter because they're only deck chairs and they're having cold water and a towel. And Charles said, I think it was Max, said, sorry, I'm on your seat. No, that's all right, don't worry about it. And they come out to the podium. There's a photo that I picked up on Autosport here. Charles is standing on second place and Max is in third. So then all of a sudden somebody's flicked the switch electronically and swapped the flags around to clear up the error. So that was just a funny thing I picked up on because obviously everyone was confused and concerned about what happened at the end of the race for Ocon when he came in to do his mandatory pit stop. The track was full of photographers. But Mick Palmer's pointed out they may not have been photographers. There may have been other officials on the circuit that had credentials to be in the pit lane, just not to access the pit lane at that time because it was still live. So, obviously, from this screenshot here, the stewards of the circuit summons the FIA up to explain it, and there's going to be immediate steps to overcome that because somebody's got to work out that, hang on, Ocon hasn't pitted yet, still an active pit lane. His chances are he's going to come in, don't send anyone out unless they need to be there, especially the mechanics at least. That was another bizarre incident that happened. So, go back to the cool-down room. Leclerc made an interesting comment post-race. I heard him say it's the loneliest race he's ever been, and I've got to give him credit for that because I don't think it was the most exciting race, as I said, I've ever watched. So, at the end of it, yeah, they were in the wrong spots. Jack Stanley asked a great question about DRS post-race. He said with a circuit like Baku where it is high speed, 90-degree corners, no runoff areas, blah, 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 is DRS not working there to the effect that it should at some other circuits where it is used? Well, it's used everywhere, of course, but for a circuit like Baku, should it go to a 2-second allocation where from 2 seconds behind you can switch it on, yep, right, go, bang, try and get the artificial overtake? Or should there be an allocation of time, like they apparently do in IndyCar, where the driver can use a certain amount of time. Once his time's up with his DRS allocation, that's it. You've got no more to use. So that's an interesting question, Jack, and I give you credit for that because I think it's a good idea. I think maybe, I'd have thought myself, we go to these circuits with the sprint races to generate this entertainment for people, to keep them going because it's only a 30-minute race, blah, 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 whatever. For the main race, should we have DRS cancelled altogether? So it just goes back to the glory days, the old days of racing where there was no DRS and it was down to the driver to actually outdrive the bloke in front of him. And the bloke in front had to outsmart the bloke trying to chase him from behind, playing cat and dog with each other without DRS. And for the sprint race, have all the DRS you want for 30 minutes and just go stupid. That's my thoughts on it. So anyway, not the most exciting race. We'll move on to next week. We've got a few back-to-back races coming, and of course Miami next weekend. So until then, I'll say thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week for the Miami Notebook. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.